Chapter 10. Terror in Texas. Terror in Texas. On August 1st, 1966, Charles Joseph Whitman gunned down 46 people from the University of Texas Tower in Austin. In essence, Whitman was a guerrilla sniper. Just as a guerrilla commits a crime against the state by attempting to overthrow the government, a mass murderer also commits a crime. In Whitman's case, he was a mentally ill individual who moved among the sane world, masquerading as a normal person. Whitman's mental camouflage was to act like everyone else, to pay the bills, to come home to his wife, to go to school. If he let his guard down and his true thoughts oozed out, he would no longer be invisible. He would be identified for what he gradually became, a homicidal sociopath. Whitman's case is instructive for a variety of other tactical reasons, such as understanding noise in an urban environment and how people react to it. Whitman's shootings teach us about the importance of elevation for an urban sniper, the advantage of shooting from a covered position, and what counter-sniper measures a security force may take against a shooter. Perhaps most important of all, Charles Whitman's case shows what a sniper can accomplish when they are unconcerned with saving their own life. When Whitman began his shooting spree, he did not care about surviving the event. His sole desire was to kill as many people as possible until he was killed himself. If Whitman wanted to live, he would have made a shot or two and then fled the scene. At most, a person or two would have had their precious lives stolen from them. Because life ceased to have any meaning for him, Whitman's sniper attack became a gruesome bloodbath. Taken in this light, Charles Whitman could be described as a sniper martyr. Whitman's sniper training. Whitman's marksmanship training began at an early age because his father was an avid shooter, indeed a fanatical gun lover. As early as 2 years of age, Whitman was seen posing with two of his father's rifles. By the time Whitman was a teenager, he was an excellent shot. Whitman received additional professional shooting instruction as a member of the United States Marine Corps, where he earned high scores in rapid, long-range fire and was best at shooting moving targets. After Whitman left the Marine Corps and attended college in Austin, he regularly fired his personal weapons at local rifle ranges, continually honing his shooting skills. It is important to note Whitman became a skilled and proficient shooter in a completely legal manner. All over the world, it is perfectly legal to play with toy guns, hunt squirrels, and have your father take you shooting. It is equally acceptable to join a nation's military, receive extensive marksmanship training, and then be discharged for military service. In most of the world, it is possible to fire sniper rifles on public firearms ranges without raising an eyebrow from anyone. As long as the shooter maintains an outward appearance of normalcy, they can train as often as they want. Planning and reconnaissance. Just as a guerrilla sniper carefully plans for their operations, so did Whitman. Whitman picked the perfect structure to shoot from, a University of Texas at Austin's Tower, and then conducted a thorough reconnaissance of it. As early as April of 1966, 4 months before his killing spree, Whitman was seen by the tower receptionist visiting the tower's observation deck. This did not raise any suspicion because many students visited the observation deck to enjoy the view, to engage in idle chatter, or just to relax. Because Whitman was just one of many students who regularly visited the tower, he fit in and visited the tower whenever he pleased. Once he was in the tower, mingling with the other campus students, Whitman analyzed his future sniper platform in detail. He saw he had clear fields of fire in all directions, and there were rain spouts on all sides he could shoot from while remaining hidden from view. Whitman also knew the layout of the observation deck, what security measures were in place, there were none, and what route to take to get from the bottom floor of the tower all the way up to the 28th floor at the top. Because Whitman was a student enrolled at the university, he had free rein to walk all over campus to observe security measures, student patterns, and the local terrain. In this manner, Whitman used the same methods a guerrilla sniper uses to scout out a firing platform in the surrounding areas. As long as a guerrilla blends into the local population, has an effective cover story, and has no incriminating evidence on their person, like a weapon, they can go anywhere they please to conduct a reconnaissance for their sniper attacks. Consequently, the guerrilla sniper can plan their attack to the tiniest detail in an overt manner without raising any suspicion, just like Whitman did. Preparation for the attack. Once Whitman conducted his detailed reconnaissance of his sniper platform in the surrounding area, he equipped himself for the attack. Whitman planned a long siege and assembled a variety of goods to support his killing, packing them into a military-style footlocker. In this footlocker, Whitman placed a portable radio, water, food, weapons, cleaning gear, a variety of weapons, plenty of ammunition, and earplugs to name a few. In fact, just a day prior to his attack, Whitman purchased a Bowie knife, binoculars, and canned goods. Since these were normal items with a variety of purposes and uses, no one thought anything of it. On the day of the attack, Whitman bought a rifle, a shotgun, and several hundred rounds of ammunition. Whitman purchased all of these items over the counter from a hardware store, a Sears store, and a local gun shop. Because Whitman had a believable cover story, he said he was going hunting for hogs in Florida, had good credit, and a reliable history of purchasing weapons on layaway plans, he bought everything he needed with ease. Whitman even rented a dolly to transport his heavy footlocker, realizing he could not carry it all by hand. Whitman was ready for a sniping operation that could easily last all day, maybe longer. The important thing to understand with these purchases is they were all completely legal. Whitman did not break any laws and was well within his rights to have everything he purchased. A guerrilla sniper can obtain weapons and ammunition in the same manner. Wherever it is legal to purchase firearms for sporting use, a guerrilla can get a weapon with ease. Whitman's ability to purchase weapons, legally, is not an isolated case, as weapons are readily acquired anywhere in the world, either over the counter or through thousands of black market dealers. The only way the ensuing massacre could have been stopped was if Whitman's school psychologist, who knew Whitman was suffering from some degree of mental illness, reported Whitman's conditions to the authorities. The government could then have placed Whitman's name on a national do not sell list, so Whitman could not buy a weapon from a legally recognized gun dealer in the country. However, at the time, Whitman's mental illness was far from being an established fact. A national do not sell to database did not exist, and thus there was no mechanism in place to seed Whitman out from the rest of the population. He was invisible. Choosing the right weapons for the job. Whitman had a variety of weapons to choose from, not just from his own collection, but from whatever he could buy over the counter. Whitman ended up taking several different types of weapons to suit a variety of needs. First, he took a .357 Magnum Smith & Wesson revolver, a Galisi Brescia pistol, a 9mm Luger pistol for personal protection. He also took a 12-gauge shotgun he modified the day of the attack, sawing off the barrel and the buttstock for close-in work. Whitman also took a .35 caliber Remington semi-automatic rifle and a .30 caliber M1 carbine, both of which could maintain an accurate, high rate of fire out to several hundred meters. However, Whitman's real workhorse was a 6mm Remington bolt-action rifle with a 4-power scope. Since the Remington 6mm is a flat shooting round and Whitman's practiced shooting it so often, he could consistently hit man-sized targets at 500 meters or more. Married up to the 6mm rifle were soft-point 6mm bullets designed to flatten and expand upon hitting a target, causing enormous soft tissue damage. It is important to note Whitman's most effective weapon was a common deer rifle. This rifle was not particularly sophisticated and did not have features common to modern sniper rifles like bipod legs and a high-power scope. Compared to today's powerhouse sniper rifles like the .338 caliber, .410 caliber, and .50 caliber variants, a 6mm round is relatively small and lacks knockdown power. Despite the limitations of his weapon system, Whitman managed to inflict significant damage from accurate fire developed through constant practice. Infiltrating the tower. After Whitman packed up the necessary supplies in his footlocker, he had to get his shooting platform, the University of Texas Tower, all while hiding his true intentions. Because Whitman was a registered student at the University of Texas, he knew what security measures the university had, and he knew how to beat them. Part of his plan to infiltrate the university was to hide all of his supplies and weapons in the footlocker. The footlocker was in fact a concealment device, allowing Whitman to transfer his weapons in it without raising suspicion. In addition to this, Whitman put on a pair of blue nylon coveralls over his red plaid shirt and jeans so he looked like a janitor or repairman. The real genius of this is Whitman matched his clothing to complement his concealment device. Whitman's plan was to look like a person in the service industry who could move in the open, unquestioned by the general public. Whitman did not sneak onto the campus like a thief in the night. He did not cleverly bypass any sophisticated security measures, nor did he create an elaborate plan. Whitman put his guns in a footlocker, placed the footlocker on a dolly, put on a pair of coveralls, and walked right by the people he would later kill. Deception was Whitman's greatest tool. When Whitman showed up at the University of Texas at Austin's security gate, he was dressed in his coveralls with his footlocker in the back of his car and the dolly in the trunk. Because Whitman was a student at the university and a lab assistant, he was issued a carrier identification card for students who needed to transport heavy or bulky materials onto campus. The security guard noticed the footlocker in the car but thought nothing of it and issued Charles a loading zone permit for 40 minutes. Because Whitman used a believable cover story, he needed to unload equipment at one of the campus buildings, there was nothing out of the ordinary to arouse the guard's suspicion. Once getting past the security guard, the rest was even easier for Whitman. He parked his car near the tower, took the dolly out of the trunk, and placed his footlocker on it. Then, Whitman wheeled his footlocker into the tower, onto the elevator, and up to the 27th floor. Many people saw Whitman walking calmly to the tower, but no one had any reason to stop or question him because he looked exactly as he intended to look, a serviceman working for the university. Anything could have been in the footlocker, cleaning supplies, repair parts, or construction material. Once Whitman got up to the 27th floor and dragged his dolly up 3 small flights of stairs to the 28th of the observation deck, he still had to get past the receptionist and other people who might be on the deck. Once Whitman discovered the tower receptionist was alone, he bashed in her skull and hit her body. Whitman killed the receptionist so quietly and quickly, several minutes later, visitors leaving the observation deck actually walked by Whitman and said hello. They saw stains on the floor, but they did not realize it was from blood. Unfortunately, another group of people ascended the final few stairs to the receptionist's area and were confronted by Whitman, who was now armed with his sawed-off shotgun. Whitman shot this family at close range, killing a boy and a girl and seriously wounding 2 others. Whitman was barricaded the doorway to the receptionist area with a table and chairs and blocked the door opening onto the observation deck with his dolly. It is important to note that several shotgun blasts Whitman fired at the visitors were never heard by people outside the building. While the blast must have been deafening in the enclosed concrete hallways, this same sturdy construction effectively contained the sounds of the shotgun. The dynamics of sound and how sound functions in an urban environment with thousands of walls, sidewalks, patios, buildings were to play a key role in the carnage to come. Whitman's shooting would start at 11:48 a.m. and end 96 minutes later with his death. In between these times, Whitman brought death and agony to scores of people from atop his new shooting platform. Tactical significance of the University of Texas Tower. At 231 feet above the ground, the observation deck of the 307-foot-tall University of Texas Tower dominated the surrounding terrain. From the tower, Whitman had good observation and clear fields of fire in all directions. Because the tower allowed Whitman to fire in a 360-degree circle, he could access the scores of microenvironments insulated from one another, making up any urban area. That meant Whitman could shoot someone 500 meters east of the tower, walk to the other side of the tower, and then shoot someone 500 meters to the west of the tower. Since the 2 different victims were a kilometer from each other, they never saw each other as they were separated not only by distance, but by numerous intervening buildings. As a result, one victim could be shot and killed, while the second one had no idea what just happened until they were themselves shot and killed. Gunshots and sound in an urban environment. Whitman's shooting spree is important to analyze as a case study, due in part to the dynamics of sound and how the noise of gunshots work in an urban environment. For instance, people who were near the tower when Whitman started shooting said they heard a popping sound. They did not recognize the sounds as gunshots. The first victim, Claire Wilson, had no idea she was shot. Thomas Ekman, who was standing next to Claire, asked her what was wrong. He too had no idea she was shot, and was then shot himself, dying instantly. Thomas Ashton saw the bodies falling to the pavement and looked towards the tower to see what was going on. As he did so, he was shot in the chest and killed. He never realized someone was shooting at the other people or himself. People in nearby buildings with the windows and doors shut, because of the air conditioning was on, could not hear the shooting outside, and if they did hear something, they did not recognize the sound as gunshots. Consequently, people on campus left the relative safety of indoors, ran outside to see what was happening, and then were shot themselves. Other people heard the gunshots, but thought the sounds were coming from inside a building. These same curious people then walked outside in plain view of hundreds of other people and were shot. The microenvironments preventing outside sounds from entering them, like vehicles, meant people could take a bus or drive their car into range at the tower and not know there was any shooting until they got off the bus or exited the vehicle. When these people heard a shot after entering their new environment, they had little chance to recognize it for what it was or where it came from. Even people walking down the street could walk around a corner and enter Whitman's field of view, oblivious to anything going on until the shooting resumed. One of the fundamental features of shooting in an urban environment is the sound of a gunshot echoes off the surrounding buildings, pavement, sidewalks, and cars. This echoing means a person may hear and recognize the gunshot, but not know where it came from. Some people on campus heard and recognized the gunshots, but assumed they came from a building several hundred meters from the tower. This misjudgment resulted in people hiding from where they erroneously thought the gunfire originated from. Consequently, these people hid from the wrong building, putting themselves into plain view of Whitman and the tower. They thought they were safe from the source of gunfire, when in fact their reactions made them the next victim. One man heard the gunshots, but thought it was the backfiring of a car. This same man looked towards the tower, stated he could see the shooter, and was then shot through the mouth, killing him instantly. Other people thought the gunshots were actually sounds from nail-driving guns used in construction. Still others thought the sounds were wooden planks slapping on concrete, or even the school's reserve officer training course members shooting blanks. Whitman's tactics. Whitman conducted an aggressive assault from his perch above the university. He moved constantly on the deck, taking a single shot and then moving to another position. He repeatedly popped up over the railing of the observation deck, aimed, shot, crouched back down, and then moved to another position. When moving crouched down, the concrete parapet surrounding the observation deck blocked any view of Whitman, so he could not be seen by the people below him. Several people saw puffs of smoke coming from the tower after Whitman's shots. Some people saw a gun barrel poking over the concrete parapet. Others saw the sun shining off his scope or binoculars, and some saw him pop his head up. Because Whitman fired from every side of the tower and no one could actually see him, the people below did not know how many shooters there actually were. Many assumed there were several snipers instead of a lone suicidal shooter. Whitman made an effort to maintain his situational awareness by tuning his portable transistor radio to KTBC, a local radio station, allowing him to listen to a reporter describe what was going on at the University of Texas. In this manner, Whitman knew what the people below him knew and used this inside knowledge to better target his victims. The press became Whitman's personal damage assessment tool, enabling Whitman to realize the extent and effects of his shooting. Ironically, the radio eventually contributed to Whitman's demise, since he turned it up so loud he did not hear the local police dismantle his makeshift barrier or loudly remove the dolly jamming the shut door to the observatory deck. While Whitman was kept up to date on what reporters on the ground saw hundreds of meters away, he lost awareness of what was happening on the observation deck, enabling policemen to gun him down point blank. Any chance of escape? Even up until the very end of the shootout, Whitman could have escaped, and it would not have taken an elaborate plan to successfully get away. Whitman could have simply walked down the stairs of the tower and pretended to be just another scared campus student. Because no one below knew what he looked like, never mind who was actually doing the shooting, Whitman could have easily intermingled among the surrounding people, blended in with the crowd, and escaped among the confusion. Obviously, Whitman did not plan on getting away. He conducted the entire attack in a manner that would eventually get himself killed. After all, Whitman killed his wife and mother before his massacre and left handwritten notes admitting to his guilt. On top of this, Whitman's footlocker holding his arsenal and supplies actually had his full name spray painted on it, leaving little doubt as to his identity once he was killed or apprehended. While he could have escaped, Whitman intended all along to die in the tower. Counter-sniper tactics. While Whitman's killing spree is instructive of the dynamics of conducting an urban sniping attack, it is equally educational on how to counter an urban sniper. While Whitman shot at the local, unarmed citizens, many of the people departed and returned with their own hunting rifles. These armed citizens then opened fire on Whitman in an attempt to kill him, forcing Whitman to keep his head down and restricting his movement on the observation deck. However, the observation deck's concrete parapet, combined with the fact the armed citizens were firing upwards at an extreme angle, protected Whitman. Nevertheless, Whitman was forced to shoot through the rain spouts, located on each side of the observation deck's 4 parapets, just to stay alive. Unfortunately, by firing through the rain spouts, Whitman was absolutely invisible from below and invulnerable from return rifle fire. Even though dozens of armed citizens fired hundreds of rounds back at Whitman with high-powered, scoped hunting rifles, he was never wounded by them, not even a scratch. The local law enforcement agency, the Austin Police Department, APD, was unprepared to deal with the suicidal sniper firing from a fortress. The APD did not have a SWAT team, and the best they could do at the time was arm individual police officers with civilian deer rifles. In one location, several law enforcement personnel were positioned at an adjacent building armed with high-powered rifles, scopes, and binoculars, returning fire each time they saw Whitman. This prevented Whitman from sticking his head over the parapet, but he continued to shoot from the rain spouts impervious to their fire. Because Whitman had such a good vantage point from which to observe his targets, he was able to pin down hundreds of people, to include police officers. Moving across any open area was dangerous, especially after Whitman successfully shot so many moving targets. Because Whitman pinned down so many people, the APD considered using a helicopter as a shooting platform to get to him, but the APD also thought it was too vulnerable to gunfire. One armed police officer and a pilot did fly a small cloth-skinned airplane by the tower in an attempt to get a shot at Whitman. However, the plane vibrated so much, the officer quickly discovered he could not get off an accurate shot. Compounding the problem was the thermal lift from hot air rising off the pavement, causing the airplane to bounce. Whitman did take notice of this and new threat and fired 2 rounds through the plane's cloth fabric, forcing the vulnerable plane to back off and keep its distance. While most police officers were pinned down or returning ineffective fire, a few made it to an underground tunnel housing the school's telephone, power, and water lines connecting the campus buildings. These police officers recognized only underground movement, providing 360-degree protection, could get them into the tower both safely and undetected. Since airplanes and long-range counter-sniper fire had no effect on Whitman and his fortress, the officers realized only a close-in assault would solve the problem. After these officers infiltrated the tower through the tunnel, they worked their way upstairs. Between the 27th floor and the observation deck, they found the surviving family members of Whitman's initial close-quarter shotgun blasts. These terrified survivors provided the police with critical intelligence that there was only one sniper and he was up on the observation deck. The cumulative effect of everything going on around Whitman meant he lost situational awareness of what was happening on the observation deck and the reception area. Because he was focused on shooting targets hundreds of meters away, because people were shooting back at him and planes were flying overhead, and because his portable radio was turned up full volume, Whitman was unaware people were closing in on him. The police who entered the tower were able to move upstairs, get into the reception area, and push out onto the observation deck, oblivious to Whitman. Once they secured a foothold on the deck, it was not long before Whitman was shot at close range, dying of wounds sustained from a shotgun and a pistol. Whitman was well prepared for a long-distance shootout, but was a sitting duck to aggressive police officers willing to do close-in work and risk it all to stop the killing. Lessons learned from the Texas Tower tragedy. While the University of Texas at Austin is an urban area, it was not a densely packed area like New York City, Chicago, or Los Angeles. Imagine if Whitman was shooting in an area packed with high-rise buildings with thousands of pedestrians drowning in a honking sea of car horns. In a heavily urbanized area, Whitman could have shot 100 people before they realized what was going on, instead of the 46 victims he ended up shooting on campus. What if Whitman used a sound suppressor on his rifle? If people had problems identifying the gunfire on a bright, sunny day in a relatively open campus area, think of the problems people would have locating a gunshot sounding no louder than a car door being shut. The reader must keep in mind all this death and chaos was caused by a lone gunman with no security element. What if Whitman had 1 or 2 other people providing security for him as he fired? What if this security element booby-trapped the 27th floor of the tower and the stairs and elevator leading up to the observation deck with high explosives and detonated these explosives as the police entered? What if the 27th floor was so damaged from the explosives the responding police officers could not physically get to the observation deck? Then the local police would not have gotten Whitman in the way they did. In fact, no one could have gotten to him in a close assault. The police would have to evacuate the general area to remove Whitman's targets, but hundreds were already pinned down and could not move, at least during daylight hours. The police could try and starve Whitman out, which would take days because of his supplies, or the police could try and talk him down, which did not seem likely. The only option would be to call in the military for an all-out assault. The sniper martyr. Whitman was effective for many reasons, but mainly because he had an unusual mindset. He was on a suicide mission, and the only way to stop him was to kill him. As a result, Whitman did not care that he quickly gave away his position by firing scores of shots from the same location. As Charles Whitman so grimly proved, the urban sniper can be employed as a terror tool. In a crowded urban area, from an ideal firing position, scores of people can be shot and killed by a lone gunman. However, employment of a sniper as a terror tool means the gunman is on a suicide mission. Repeated shots from the same position, as Charles Whitman showed, are a death sentence.